do. Now, this lecture, if I can segue into the lecture, this lecture, responding to the call of life, is all about stepping into life and um, doing it in a spirit, not from the ego, right? Where the ego is trying to make a bargain, trying to get something, trying to will something. The real self steps into life simply for its own sake, because we want to better ourselves. We want to help fulfill this plan of salvation, and we also want to let ourselves be inspired. So this lecture, responding to the call of life, is really about two different ways of confronting life, two different ways of um, moving into life, um, two different ways of identifying with the self, right? Um, there is, on the one hand, what the guide calls the ego, which is the organizing aspect of us, where we are planning things, where we see the world in duality. That's the thing about the ego, right? In other words, pleasure and pain. We're trying to go for one and flee from the other, black and white. Um, this is good for me and bad for you. The ego looks at the world basically as a fearful place where opening up is threatening. And the guy talks about this like on page 6, where he basically says there's a conflict. This concept of going out into life and encountering life in an open way. Now, for the ego, that's threatening, because as the guide says, on page 6, if we're afraid that if we go into life as an open, vulnerable, trusting person, we're going to be taken advantage of. We are going to be hurt. So we're afraid to do that because we have to get what we want. We're trying to figure out how the ego is trying to figure out how to get what it wants and what it needs. On the other hand, if we're selfish, totally selfish, that's not going to work either, because other people will pick that up. If I just go into my life trying to get whatever I can for myself, people are going to see it. And then I'm going to be hurt. So down the road in the lecture, he talks about this dichotomy, which is, on the one hand, you're afraid to be vulnerable, you're afraid to be unselfish. On the other hand, you don't want to be selfish either. I mean, this reminds you a lot of the Christian, consider the lilies of the field, right? There's that, I think it's the passage in one of the Gospels where, the flowers are so beautiful. God has given them so much beauty. And as it says, if God has given the flowers so much, won't he array you similarly? Aren't you, as a human being, as a creation of God, entitled to the same raiment or clothing that the flowers have? But of course, we don't trust that we're going to get it. We've got to go out and get it for ourselves. We are not willing to trust. And of course, obviously, Christ says, give all you have to the poor. Just go ahead, give it away, and you'll be taken care of. We're afraid to do that too, right? I mean, Tracy and Joel, you really kind of showed up for that by giving so much to the homeless. But you did it from a position of security. You didn't give them your actual clothes and your actual food. You gave them a lot. Who has the courage? I mean, in India, there are the mendicants, right? That even the Indians, some of the mendicants are so poor they don't have clothes, and they depend on the world or people there to give them what they need to survive. So, not to digress too much, but I think we're in that situation of being afraid to be completely giving because we don't think we're going to get what we need, and also we don't want to be selfish, because if we're selfish, people are going to see it, and we're not going to get satisfied that way either. All right, so a lot of the path work has to do with the guide always talking about that we have to be able to confront our negativity, right? We are enjoined to see what's negative and to expose it. Um, but if we take the focus on the lower self as the primary mission, I think we're in danger of being swallowed up by that. And I think there's something greater that the guide talks about here. In other words, there's a component of joy in the pathwork. And I want to read this paragraph from page 4. He says, you have all experienced to some degree through certain meditations that the universe contains unlimited good available to you if you open yourself to it. There are times when you vividly experience this truth, and you know without the shadow of a doubt that your experience is not coincidence nor illusion. You know it to be a fact. When this is so, your entire attitude is clear, free, and relaxed. You are deeply convinced of your truth and trust it. You feel deserving and hence do not cringe away from fulfillment. Hence it comes. Your whole being resonates with a positive, constructive vibration without any conflict. You do not feel selfish for wishing to experience beauty, nor do you withhold the best of yourself. No, I think that that's true. I mean, that we've all experienced times in our lives where we thought that the universe contains unlimited good. Would everyone agree?
Mhm.
There are times when you feel the abundance of the universe and you feel that you are a meaningful part of it. Um, so I really feel that we should try to make this the core of our existence. We should remind ourselves of this feeling and not always seek to simply confront the negative. Confronting the negative is what you do to get back to this feeling, I think. So it's important to think back to the times when we felt like this. Um, there's a passage in Meister Eckhart where he says something like, if you find yourself lost, go back to the time when you did have the way, when you remembered. Uh, go back to the point where you remembered your connection with God, with the universe. So if we can remember these moments when we did feel that connection and that sense of abundance, that's an important place to remember. Because this lecture, it's about letting this state of awareness, that is the abundance of the universe, letting it emerge from our insights into ourselves. In the lecture, he talks about the wall within, what prevents us from experience that cosmic feeling or the feeling of unity. And that's what the lecture is about. Um, he also says on page 4, he says, um, the motive on this path is not to appear right or good or to prove anything, to remove the effects of identifying with your ego because you ignore or fear the activation of the real self. He says, as long as you fail to orient yourself completely toward activating the inner center of your real self, you cannot know real safety, peace, and well being. So that's the reason why we're on the path, to orient ourselves in that direction. So we don't go on this path for ego gratification, right? We don't go on this path to shield ourselves from bad things that could happen. Or we don't go on the path to make up for guilt. We go on the surface, we go on the path to be of service to God's plan. For we go on this path, it's a journey to connect with that ultimate reality, with the real self. So on page 1, just to hop back for a moment, the guide says, people always need a clarification of their motives and concepts, where they're going, and why. Then he talks about this concept of living exclusively within your ego self and what that means. He says the ego self is, quote, trapped in a painful struggle that tears you apart and to which you see no solution. Because of that, and this is a very important quote, I think, because of that basic mental insecurity, we create all sorts of pursuits to drown out or to overlay this painful struggle. So I think that it's very easy to see examples of these quote unquote painful pursuits the guides talk about. I mean, if people are obsessed with one thing or another, if people are caught up in their images, if people spend a lot of their life energy in ways that are not really productive and not furthersome, I think that that's an example of creating pursuits because the ego, like I think it's obvious, right? I mean, to be in the ego is to be in a state of pain because the ego is conflicted, because the ego sees duality. So you want to overlay that sense of pain. You want to anesthetize it. You want to find something to distract yourself from it. So, I could be a political junkie. I could be like an obsessive collector of something. I could be obsessed with getting ahead in my job. I could be looking at my stock picks every day. Things to drown out the desire for the real self. Things um, to try to distract us from the pain of the ego. And that's the important thing. The what I like that the pursuits to drown out or overlay this painful struggle. So yeah, I think a lot of our efforts are devoted to these pursuits. Daydreaming, creating drama where we don't have to create drama, right? All of it is a distraction so that we don't have to pursue this path of self-facing. But taking care of pets is definitely a higher self thing to do. Just looking at the puppy there. But what's the antidote to the ego reality that we are caught up in? Well, the antidote to that is the call of responding to the call of life. He says, life issues a call. It makes a demand on every living individual. Most people do not sense this call. Only as you become aware of your own illusions can you simultaneously become more aware of the truth within yourself. So only by understanding the ego's illusions can you come closer to your real self. Yes, I think it is true that many people don't really sense this call. Not everybody is a seeker. Maybe at some point, everyone will be a seeker. But I think it's clear enough that many people do not resonate with this concept that life issues a call. So the answer to the ego is to get involved in this stream of life that the guy talks about. Awakening the real self. And he says that this call that we respond to, quote, disregards personal attachments, social considerations, and any other peripheral values, including personal pain or pleasure. So there's something about the call of life that is really not centered in the ego at all. It doesn't care about what the ego cares about. Obviously, the ego is focused on personal attachments and social considerations and other things like that. But when you are inspired by the real self, those things don't seem to really matter. Now, if he's saying that personal pain or pleasure is disregarded by the real self, by the stream of life, that's kind of interesting because that sort of implies that there are two different kinds of pleasure, at least. the pleasure of the ego. Obviously, the ego takes pleasure in lots of things, but usually it's either or things it takes pleasure in. The real self, though, takes pleasure in other things. The guide talks about conditions that promote the awakening of the real self bring peace, joy, well-being, and intense pleasure. Uh, so I guess we're talking about some kind of pleasure that's different from the pleasure of the ego. Such is the stream of life, which is often blocked by humanity's stubborn resistance to see it. Hi, Beverly. So what we have to do here in the pathwork under oh yeah, folks are coming in because of course the meeting was supposed to start on time. Hey, Beverly, Teresa, we started our lecture discussion a little bit early today because we had a quick board meeting, a quick membership meeting. And so I'm in the middle of my presentation about lecture 145. So if you'll bear with me. Hi, good to see you. Anyway, so the pathwork has to do with addressing the dualities that the ego sees. On page 2, he says, how the ego blocks the real self is a personal question. What is universal is the fact that transformation of one's character is necessary to permit the life stream to flow freely. All right. So in other words, that's really the whole pathwork process in a nutshell, right? What in each of us, particularly in each of us, prevents the life stream from flowing freely? What are, as the guide says, the character defects that prevent us from flowing with this life stream? Kevin, who's not here, he wrote a reflection about his personal path, and he sent it to me today. And what he says is that when he has something that happens in life that is troubling to him, or where he says, um, when he experiences an occasional and surprising brittle response to life's flow. In other words, you're going along, you think that you're calm, you can handle stuff. All of a sudden, something happens that makes you feel brittle. Right, Marion? You're nodding your head. I mean, that is when your ego kind of comes in and goes, uh-oh, there's something here that's making me uncomfortable. And I'm not really sure why. Is it an image that I have, some kind of a wrong conclusion I came to that makes me worry and that suddenly knocks me out of my zone here, my unitive state? So what Kevin does is he has these 2 and 3 person conversations when that happens. And I guess you guys know what that is, right? In other words, there's an exercise in the pathwork where we used to call it the 3 chairs, where you put up 3 chairs in your living room or wherever you are. One chair is the lower self, one chair is the mask self, and one chair is the higher self. And you sit in each chair, and then you body forth what that part of yourself is saying, what the lower self is saying. You just let it out, what the mask self is saying, what the higher self is saying. And so then you get clarity about this thing that has made you feel brittle. So that's a good example of the pathwork process and that's what Kevin said that he does when he gets into a situation where he feels a quote unquote a surprising brittle response to life's flow. So that's the personal question for all of us, which is, how does the ego for each of us block the lower self? Block the real self from coming through. I want to read 2 paragraphs from page 2. Any path leading to genuine self-realization must be intensely personal and has to deal with intensely personal problems. Those who believe that imbibing general truth and collecting more truthful beliefs can accomplish that goal delude themselves. They do so because they do not want to look at the truth of who they are at the moment. They prefer an idealized notion of themselves. Their very evasion alienates them more from the goal than the honest admission that they do not want to look at themselves, and they do not want to permit themselves to experience emotions they fear or disapprove of, and above all, do not wish to transform their character defects. The actual, not theoretical, activation of the real self with its vibrating life, limitless abundance, infinite possibilities for good, and its supreme wisdom and joy happens to the exact degree that you dare take a look at the temporary truth of yourself. This means feeling what you feel, having the courage to transform yourself into a better human being. And this echoes what I said in the beginning, for no other reason than a desire to contribute to life rather than to make an impression and grasp for approval. When the immediate barriers to transformation for its own sake are overcome, then the real self with all its treasures will clearly manifest. So, there's no bargain. There's no bargain to be made with the ego. If I do this, I'll get this. If you allow me to do this, I'll have this. This is about transformation for its own sake. That's what the pathwork is about. Now, then later on this page, the guy talks about shame, the shame that we have about ourselves. This is something very common in the pathwork process. One feels ashamed of one's feelings, emotions, negative intentions. But if you don't confront that shame, don't allow it, don't you allow yourself to feel it, then you're isolated. You're lonely. You feel you're different from others. And then that's another scheme to prevent you from opening up and relating to others. So that's something for each to explore. What about ourselves is shameful? What do we believe is shameful? So now the guide on page 3 says there's a very straightforward way to figure out if you're doing the right thing, so to speak, or if you are where you're coming from. Remember, in the beginning, I said that this whole lecture is about the difference between identifying with the ego and identifying with the real self. He says on page 3, only ask whether you are motivated by love and truth and have totally committed yourself to a course of honesty and integrity in this particular issue, regardless of public opinion. Do you let go the fear, the pride, the self-will of your ego and strive toward the voice of the divine within you, again, regardless of appearances? This way is always open. And whenever you choose it, it will emancipate you from the ego struggle. So then again, the guide talks about something which is also common in Pathwork lectures, that quote unquote, the call of life disregards the superficial morality most people ardently adhere to or equally ardently fight against. So the pathwork is not about conformity with social norms. That may be the right thing, or it may not be the right thing. But the voice of the inner self gives a true compass as to where to go. I mean, there are many people that have followed this kind of call to their own personal, apparently to the death of their ego. People that follow a call which is not necessarily well accepted or embraced by society may find themselves ostracized. But mostly the pathwork does not require that kind of a thing. We're not about self-sacrifice, in terms of acceptance by society is not demanded, but it may occur. There may be a time when people have to take a stand based on these universal principles and based on the contact with the real self. that will turn some people off, you know, will act to cause a rift. It's like who is that Rabbi Nehemiah back in the Second World War? He says, "Well, when they came for the Jews, I didn't protest because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for the Catholics, and I didn't. That doesn't bother me. I was a Protestant, etc., etc. But then when they came for me, there was nobody to stand for me. So if you have a conviction that you have to stand for something, even though society says it's not right, or you might be sanctioned for that, that might be the pull of your real self. All right. So now we understand how it is to determine if a particular course of action is something that is coming from your ego or from your real self. You have to meditate on where you're coming from, as he says. Now, he talks about what he calls the tragedy of humanity on page 3. He says, why does humanity put up such a struggle against fulfilling its destiny when such destiny brings nothing but good? Why do you resist hearing the call of your life stream when it brings you all that is safe, good, productive, and joyful? This is the tragic battle of humanity. On the one hand, you are very disturbed by the insecurity of your existence. You sense the waste of your life as long as you pay exclusive allegiance to the outer self and therefore to outer values. On the other hand, you do everything in your power to maintain your unhappy state. In fact, you seek more and more means to reinforce your ego identification, more outer ways, outer activities, outer beliefs, and outer escapes. At times, you may succeed only in making yourself deaf to the voice from deep within. At other times, you feel the deep unrest, but you refuse to understand it. So, I mean, look, my dad was a professor of English literature, and he would often bring stories to his class, freshman class at Pace College, where these themes would be kind of um, put forward in literature, like The Death of Ivan Ilyich, the great novella by Tolstoy, which is about a man who is dying. And everyone in his life is just trying to think about what their own personal advantage is. Everyone is just trying to figure out how they're going to. One guy wants to get his job. His wife is thinking, well, how much money is she going to get? Everything is outer values. Everything is focused on the outer values. They all are making themselves deaf to what's really going on with this man. And there are many stories about that. Obviously, there's lots of literature and art that talks about that. Um, the waste, people sense a waste, their lives are being wasted. At the same time, they can't stop, they can't turn away from whatever it is, right? Except if you're a seeker. I mean, if you're a seeker, your job is to try to deal with that feeling of waste, not hide it, not try to gloss it over, but say, yeah, I'm wasting my life and I want to know how not to waste it. I mean, the experience of being reborn or conversion experience, all of a sudden the scales drop from one's eyes. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about how the ego makes way for the real self. At some point, the ego goes, hey, look, this isn't working. I must try something else. And I think that that's what the pathwork says, that in lifetime after lifetime, often you keep on doing the same thing over and over again, like Groundhog Day. And then at some point, you say, this isn't working. I have to live in a different way. So I'm going to seek the real self instead of seeking the ego identification. And that's what the guide, I think, means when he talks about, quote, the tragedy of humanity, the tragic battle of humanity. And so he says, only those who consciously and deliberately make the decision and commit themselves once and for all to living their life for the primary purpose of activating the real self can find the deep inner peace that exists, even while inner errors still prevent total self-realization. So what we're saying is that the path of self-facing as you confront these inner errors, misconceptions, things that give you pain, things that embarrass you, you grow at the same time. So you're trying to find out what in you obstructs the real self. And just by doing that, your connection to the real self grows, becomes stronger. Just another note I want to mention here before we talk about this lecture is the role of meditation in this pathwork process. Yeah. And again, on page 6, I'm just recapping what I just said. A person who genuinely desires to transform character defects is not in the least concerned with outer appearances or with what others think, but exclusively with the transformation itself, whether others see and admire it or not. He talks about halfway down that page, try to perform this inner movement by letting yourself stream forth in complete affirmation instead of the old negation. When this inner movement can take place, when you move toward the world with a relaxed attitude of being equally ready to give and receive, transformation will not seem hazardous. It will seem like a wonderful venture. So it's not about demanding that other people change or demanding the ego that its needs has to be satisfied. It's about being receptive. For a long time, we had to be primarily concerned with uncovering your defects and illusions, your negativity or destructiveness, which you deny and negate. That this was very important. Now, a second major phase of the work can be envisaged, the phase in which you practice extending yourself into the universe. Now, that's really something to think about and meditate about, I think. The concept of extending yourself into the universe, which means trusting the universe. And part of it is meditating about that connection and the difference between the ego, the way the ego sees things, and the way the real self sees things. I'm trying to find the paragraph where the guy talks about meditation, because I was kind of struck by that. And, the pathwork process of meditation is really a different kind of meditation. I find it very hard to do. It's very difficult. It's when you hold different concepts in your mind and you try to, what's the word? You try to see different alternatives, and then you try to assert and affirm the way the guide looks at reality, the unit of state. I'll find it. But anyway, I hope this has been informative. Our discussion here about this lecture. Yeah, another quote here on page 8. I want to emphasize that this transformation happens at the same time. You're battling with the ego and you're also growing out of it. When you begin to succeed in this transformation, you will be strong enough to stand happiness. And that, I think, is not the ego happiness. That's not the happiness that one gets from planning, figuring things out, determining what it is you're going to get, organizing life. It's a different kind of happiness. It's a happiness you have to be strong enough to stand. You can claim the best when you are in the process of transforming whatever makes you dislike yourself, whether or not you are aware of this self-dislike, whether or not you are still projecting your self-hate onto others. Then you will realize the truth of absolute reality and your real self. which is that there is no limit to expansion. Through this unfoldment, your intuition will become strong and reliable. You will then heed the demand of your personal life stream. You will have the courage to go with it, whether or not it seems to conform with outer expectations, rules, and values. I believe the guide at one point said that someone's task in life may be seemingly very minor or trivial to what one other person, what one might think. Um, in other words, one person's task in life might just be to help one other person overcome something or understand something. That may be the whole reason why we're here. Uh, I often thought it was funny when people who talk about reincarnation, often they think that they were a very high person, like they were a pope or they were a great prince or they were, a king or something special. But so many tasks are vital, but we may consider that they're, not significant. The ego might think they're not significant, but this is one of the big paradoxes of life, right? In other words, as they say, only God sees what you're doing and the value of it and the importance of it. Nobody else has to know. It doesn't matter what other people seem to think or how you are on the totem pole or whether people judge you as being successful. That is really kind of beside the point. And I think that this lecture says that also, among the many things that it does say. So thank you, brothers and sisters. Sorry, that's what we say in the union movement, but thanks, friends. And so let's talk about this. And if anyone has personal thoughts about whatever their personal wall within, what the character defect is that prevents them from extending into the universe, let's talk about that too. All right. I always call on Tracy first, don't I? So Tracy, why was it important for you to pick this lecture? I can't hear you. Oh, can you unmute yourself, Tracy, or do we have to do something different?
Okay. I had to first get back. I'm on a little phone. I had to switch back into the screen where there's just you, and now I'm at the corner. Had all of us on the screen, and you can't unmute on that screen on the iPhone. So I'm fiddling with it. Well, anyway, I mean, I didn't pick this lecture. I always just go into a meditative state, and then a number comes to me. I don't know why or how, but it's been going on now for years, right?
Right.
So it's I mean, every time I pick a lecture, it's the same. I just go into a deep meditation and wait for a number to appear in my head, and then that's lecture 9.9 times out of 10. Sometimes you veto it, or sometimes I realize, you know, but most of the time that's how it happens. So, but I really, there's no coincidences. I've figured that out now some time ago, but I finally have a really good understanding of what the ego is, which I've been struggling with for years. But I actually got the sort of aha moment from Eckhart Tolle. I've been listening to Eckhart Tolle, and he summed up the ego in one sentence. The ego is identification with form. And once I heard that sentence, everything sort of fell into place, because if you identify with if you're identified with form, it's vulnerable, because all forms appear and disappear. So right from the get-go, you're going to have a deep-seated realization that your form identity is fragile and temporary. And if you're only identifying with that, then you're going to be very guarded of that, because when it's gone, if that's how you identify, if your consciousness identifies with that, then you're gone. But it gets even more complicated because this is a plane of duality, the consciousness by definition that incarnates here is identified with form. So, I mean, we are now, and it's all sort of coming into focus to me. So the universe, this earth, and all of us all have the same origin with the same purpose. And our purpose is to have our consciousness vibrating as high as possible. And the very fact of doing that does far more for the world than even, you referred to Joel and I in the homes, because that affects everybody who's around you at every single moment. And every one of us has had the experience of going into a room or something, and you're just, oh, the vibe is not good here, because there's one or more people there who are vibrating at a low frequency, and we're all energy and we feel it. So we're being asked to Earth now, and all of us that are temporarily here are being asked to participate in this mass shift of consciousness from the form to spirit, to the greater, to something, to the unmanifested form. And that is a very tall task. And the reason for that, besides the fact that we are here because our consciousness is at the level that it is being drawn to this consciousness sphere. Otherwise, we wouldn't be incarnated here. If our consciousness was higher, we would have been drawn to an incarnation, a manifestation in a different sphere. So we have that working against. And the other thing is that the brain itself, which is the most intricate form of manifested consciousness, its original function was to seek danger. That's the original function of the brain. It's not meant to look up at the sky and the flowers and say how beautiful. It's meant from early man to seek danger and to be in a defensive mode. Around the corner there could be an animal that could kill you. Over here there could be an approaching, clan that's going to come and take all your horses. So we are now at a stage where we have to almost shut off the frontal part of the frontal lobe of our brain so that we can experience the connection to the universal consciousness. And so not only are we being asked as the earth as an entity to move from a consciousness that is by definition folk attached to form. That's the consciousness of a dualistic plane. We're individualized, we're separated, and so we're being asked to do that, and we're also being asked to transform the basic usage of our brain. So that's why we struggle so much. But I have just in the last period of time had a really big breakthrough personally I know now I don't have to meditate or think on it. I can feel it instantly if I'm primarily, in my ego self, or if I'm primarily in my higher self. And if it's very difficult to put into words, but when I'm in my ego self and I'm, by definition, what's in it for me? What can I get out of this? How can I win? How can I keep from losing? It feels heavy. And when I'm in a unified state of consciousness, it feels not light, that's not the word, but sort of almost like clear or something.
I hear what you're saying.
Mm.
There's also kind of a it's like a golden thread that kind of guides you along. I mean, again, there's all these metaphors from art and literature, like the golden thread that guided Theseus through the labyrinth. In other words, the whole thing about being guided to go this way instead of that way, that's listening to your higher self. That's listening to this real self. That's why you have a feeling, okay, I should go this way.
Right, because your instinct is very strong, and yeah, so you're just kind of being led along. It becomes almost very life becomes almost very easy because you're just sort of the universal consciousness is pulling you in the direction that it wants you. It's using you. So the universal consciousness is using us, the current forms we're in, to help with this overall plan. So when you let that happen, I really experience it a lot when I write. If I'm trying to write and I'm not connected to, I say, to the mothership, I can write, but it's not good. But if I sit down and I let the universal consciousness flow through me, my fingers fly across the keyboard and produce beautiful sentences because I'm not writing. And I can totally feel the difference. There's just totally a completely different experience. I think Joel has described that too. He's an artist, and anybody who's an artist or any creative process, we're all artists. It's just how we create. Some people write, some people make music, some people draw, people paint, some people bake. It just there's a many different ways that the creative energy comes through us. But all that is the universal consciousness too. So if you have to be unblocked, if you will. And I guess that's why we had to start our path by finding all the blockages, because you can't that life stream can't flow through you. You got a lot of rocks and boulders and everything in your river. You got to get them out of the way so that the water can flow freely. So it's been kind of interesting to me that it's more I got this through Eckhart Tolle than I did from the Pathwork, because I listened to him quite a bit. But as soon as he said that one sentence, the ego is identification with form. It was like, okay. It was just like one of those, like I just felt it like at a cellular level, like, okay, that just explains, because I've really struggled. What is the ego? I mean, for years now, what is the ego? And it's your part, there's that saying about like the higher self can make you want to go to church, but the ego has to get into the shower and drive you there. But but when you just think about it as the ego is identification with form. So when we are in an identification with our current form, even if we're doing something good, we're still in the, we're not, we're still connected more. And there's nothing wrong with that. See, it's not like there's anything. This is where we're at. This is where I'm at, and if I wasn't at this stage, there would be no point for me to manifest in a dualistic state of consciousness in a world this is a dualistic plane of consciousness. I just wouldn't get anything out of that experience. So de facto, I'm here. So de facto, that's where my consciousness is as well. I think this is a very difficult, and that's why we have so many cycles, through different incarnations, be it here on Earth. I'm sure there's a gazillion other planets and physical manifested forms that we can take. We don't always have to be here. But like, I know Marion studies Mir Baba, and he's really explains it in his book God Speaks, with charts and things that you can understand. This is like the nadir, if you will. You get stuck down here because it's a very sticky, this particular, because we're in a growth sphere. This is a growth sphere. So everything appears solid here. It's like, I was just talking to Joel, we're looking at this table. He said, it's amazing. That table is not solid. It's vibrating light. But the consciousness that we that Joel and I have right now, we experience that table as solid. And if I fell on it, it would hurt me. But it's not solid. It's not solid. It's vibrating molecules of light that are vibrating so quickly that my level of incarnation can't see it. So just in the from the point of physics and science, is all is coming together for me too. The other just fascinating little factoid that I learned this from also from Eckhart is that he makes a big point of everything that arises passes away. Nothing is permanent, not even rocks, right? Everything has this characteristic arising and passing away. The average lifespan of something that's born in the ocean is 7 minutes. 7 minutes. That's the average lifespan. So that just shows you how, obviously a little tiny thing in the ocean is not us. We live a little bit longer than 7 minutes, but it 7 minutes, 70 years, it's quick. This is not a permanent resting place. This is we're passengers passing through. And I think I'm starting to babble, so I'm gonna be quiet.
Yeah, I have to say, yay, Tracy! Thank you. That was really great. It was really wonderful to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. It struggles to put it into words. Like the minister says, I'm sorry to have such a long sermon today. I would have made a short one, but I didn't have time to prepare it.
You helped me. I just wanted you to know it really helped me. It felt really good and it helped me. I wanted you to know that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Really.
you. And I don't understand it well enough to be succinct. I'm a lawyer, and there's a phenomenon in that too as well. If you really, really understand a case, you can write a brief in 1 or 2 pages. When you kind of get it, but not completely, it takes you 10 or 20 pages. So I'm at the 10 or 20 pages still with this, but I can feel it and I know it, but I don't know it and get it well enough to explain it to and clear quickly. But thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so somebody else's turn.
Responding to the call of life. Any reflections on that? Anyone?
So Tracy, I thank you again for that quote, identification with the form, because that's what I was struggling at, reading and listening to this lecture. There is like a dichotomy, disparity in me. When I sit down to meditate right now, I go extremely high in the spirit and I feel the unified state. I've experienced the unified state. I experience myself as a soul, and it's beautiful, and it's overwhelmingly beautiful and powerful, and there is no end to it. Then I come back to the form, right? And there is so much fear. There is so much, conflict, and I don't feel the same. I don't feel that unified field anymore. I don't feel that happiness, that bliss, that unending joy, that unified state. So I think that's also what you were talking about, what he's talking about, that as soon as we're back in the senses and I open my eyes from a deep meditation, I see the table is real. I have seen everything as pixels of light coming out of meditation. I have experienced that this is not real, and I know it. But yet, when I come out of that deep meditation state and I'm just in the ego, I guess, because I'm in this form, I not only experience physical hunger or, but I experience all sorts of negative emotions like fear, like dislike, like all these blockages. So I think what this is helping is to unify on this field, on the film of ego, because yes, we can go very high in the spirit, and I guess a lot of people here are deeply spiritual and have their own practices. So you can experience the unified state, you can even experience enlightenment. But then you come back to the form and there is physical pain, there is hunger, and there's all sorts of sensations that are not so pleasant and blocking. And you are like, well, hell, what happened? I was just in a bliss flying around, and enjoy and completely happy in the unified state, then I open my eyes and there's a lot of problems here, you know, and this hits hard. Is the ego. It's the ego. It's the me. It's the, you know, I want to be recognized. So I think what he's talking about in this lecture is how to overcome that part.
Right.
You
He's
know,
talking
how
about
to,
what he talks about, the wall within, you
the
know,
wall, right?
wall, which you have to, you can't force yourself to get to the unified state. You have to interpret the meaning of the wall, he says, translate it into clear words. Whenever you doubt that you can have your goal or feel guilty about getting it or have a sense of not deserving it or are afraid of life's demands when you do have it, these still do not add up to the final answer. The reservation within yourself must be linked to a character defect you have not really faced, nor do you wish to, because you do not want to abandon it. So something
that's
magnetizes
the
you
hard
to the
part.
situations that you find that you are conflicted with in life that are difficult. You have to find out what inside you magnetizes yourself to those situations.
Right, that's the hard part. That's like, I feel like two streams right now within me. One of them is the spiritual self, the higher self, when I can close my eyes, go in deep meditation and be in bliss for as long as I'm there. And then I wake up and I'm like, what happened? I'm here and I don't feel like that anymore. You know, like, what is it? So that's the hard part. That's the hard work to, you know, it's hard to look at, like, what is it? What is it? Where is the block? You know, what is causing this? What is attracting this? So I think that's the work.
That's
And
the
I think
pathwork.
ultimately, huh? That's
That's the
pathwork.
pathwork. Mm-hmm.
And I think ultimately, you know, the other paths can lead you to very high enlightened states, but to unify them on this field, like Tracy is saying, we're in this gross dimension for a reason, is the work of the pathwork to literally pull through, dissect, and clear that experience coming back from a high bliss and unified state and saying, oh shit, you know, I'm not in it anymore because I'm in my form. So that's how I feel this lecture. You know, that's how I feel that work to be done.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else have realizations about either this conflicting points of view? Where do you come from, the ego or the real self? Or also perhaps what it is that prevents you from feeling secure and comfortable in your real self? Any thoughts about that? Marian.
Oh, thank you for asking. I will share some of my personal experience because I can't say any of it better than what the guide said in that lecture. And I'll share what's important for me. And I don't quite know where I am right now. The lecture spoke to me immediately with aha, yes, this is it. This is describing some of the conundrums I'm in at this time in my life. So for me, some of the what I call tools that I appreciate so much in the pathwork and core energetics is that I do with everything. It has helped me to know my personality, main personality defense and higher self aspect of open-heartedness on the higher self, because I'm in my personality, my dominant is emotion in the reason, will, and emotion defenses. And so therefore, I always try to be the good girl and look good and get a lot of approval. And so what got buried underneath was the bad girl and the stubborn, obstreperous girl. It was all underneath. So I've spent years doing work, bringing her out, bringing that aspect of me out, and having it transform and finding my true, some aggression and my true self-assertion through it. So to me, I love that lecture 190 about the gateway, through the gateway, what you find you through the gateway. And that whole passage in that lecture 190 of Through the Gateway, because I find through the gateway of all of my aggression and meanness and nastiness comes my true self-assertion. So I've had to find very healthy ways, to express that through writing, through core work, through all of that. And so with that, I also, the lecture, The Power of the Word, is very powerful because I keep in my wallet a phrase, because word is vibration. So I keep in there some statements to remind me. And one is, whatever I say after I am will always follow me and give me more of it. So if I say, oh, I'm so tired, or I'm so disgusted with this life, or well, I get more of that. I get more of that. Then what I've learned is to use the word feeling. Oh, I feel tired. It's a different vibration. And feelings go in a wave through the self, and one leads to the next one. And so I have to really observe myself if I'm collapsed over in that dense energy of, I'm so this, or oh, I'm so that, I'm so that. It's such a low vibration. Whereas, oh, I feel discouraged about what's going on in my life, then I have inspiration. So these tools presented to us I find just so valuable. And that way, I can speak to, and I love also working with higher self, lower self, and a mask. So what I've been doing a lot this last year or so is my ego self, my little ego, the small e. I use she because I was a woman in this life, and I've noticed that every time myself with the expanded self, my higher self, as I'm expanding into something new through the arts, in nature, I am in the unitive state. I am expanding. I now expect little Marion to oppose me. It's no longer a surprise. It's like, so I no longer attack my resistant self. I now turn, and it's all in the communication lecture, which is a wonderful lecture. And a lot of the tools I got was through nonviolent communication, was taking that communication lecture and taking it further with NVC and turning to her and doing a little play acting and reflect to her what I see. Oh, I see I'm expanding into the universe. And she says, I'm not going there. I don't want to go in that unknown void. I like it here. Even though it's painful here, it's known and it's familiar. I'm not going out into that unfamiliar unknown. And she gets really crabby and so it's what comes up from the unconscious with my type of personality. So I'm not telling everybody else to do what I do, but I'm working with mine. And when I listen to her, I become empathic toward that aspect of myself. I say, oh, is there anything that we could do together where you could take a little step into some new experience where you'll feel safe? And then I listen, and she gives me some clue, because she's that energy is all me. And so I am not her, the energy is all me. And then I might say, I'd say, okay, what is that? And she might say, well, there's that new coffee shop down the street, and they have those coconut milk lattes. I would love to try one of those. So then I can say, oh, okay, we could go do that. And I'll be with you. I'll hold your hand and we'll go and enjoy that. Then what comes is a real need of mine has emerged, because I have so much I have to do in my life to take care of myself that I don't often give myself a break just to have some pleasure and enjoy myself, be in the moment. So she's been my clue to a real need. So I'm gonna end with that, because I can't cover this whole lecture. It's impossible. You all guys have done a great job of it. I'm just sharing some of because I learned from the Enneagram work that I have an aspect of myself that is very pessimistic. And it was such a relief to find that out years ago. So pessimistic Marion is going to arise from the unconscious, and it's how I am with her that makes a difference, so that we can transform, so she can transform. So thank you. I'll end with that. That's where I have my creativity. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion. You always give beautiful examples about the unitive state, I must say. Yes, Marcella,
Hello,
how are you?
can you hear me okay? Yeah. Yeah, I was listening to Marian speak. One thing that was interesting that exists in my language, that's Portuguese, is very different when you say I am. One means I'm feeling as a state, a temporary state, and I am as adopting something as who you are. So it's very interesting that, and I wonder how is the translation for the Pathwork there. I should check it out. And yeah, it was one thing that came to me that this I have lately experienced that wall a lot, and it comes as a fear. And it's come as a fear as a death of the ego, and I notice how I'm so strongly attached to it, and I'm so much into my mind, into my head, into the thoughts, and is never a good outcome. I notice I end up spiraling down and judging myself and being really hard on myself, and then I notice how I get out of that, and it's related to this inner child too, this little Marcella, and it's my inner truth as well, voice telling me, and I question myself, like, you taking yourself too seriously. And I started laughing, and I noticed how much I'm believing so much in this role that I'm playing, and then that is a lighter way to get out of there. I notice when I go into that, when I'm flowing the stream of life, is very rewarding, fulfilling, um, feeling, and everything seems right. Every step or word, and even the mistakes, seem super on the right direction, and life has a meaning when I'm doing that. My struggle is I wonder if it's just a temporary when I'm doing something and then I stop. So I switch back to the ego, and then I go back to the unity, and then I in service to flow and bring my gift, or I'm in service to whatever I need to do in this planet. And I struggle to actually. There is a desire to be constantly connected in the stream of life, but I don't know if that possible. It's just you got to come back and play this other um, theater that we believe, and then switch back again. I'm gonna get a charger my phone, my yeah. So that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you. Yeah, you kind of flow until something happens, and then you have to confront why it is that you got knocked off course. Because that's the way I see it.
Yeah.
And there's always ego is always kind of saying, "Oh, wait a second, you could get more if you do it my way," but it's not true, of course.
Yeah, can I?
Barbara, yeah, go ahead.
Hi. I just, for those of you who came late, I'm on vacation. Well, on vacation, I'm on an art retreat right now in Puerto Rico, and it's, like paradise. The weather's perfect. It's beautiful. But I'm also there with, other people, and I think that that's for me the challenge of, the like being sort of like a team player. We're doing cooperative meals, we're doing cooperative um, shopping. But it's just like those little feelings that come up of like, oh, they're eating more. They're, who's paid for, how are we going to divide the money, or how, just things that are very they all work out always, but that, in my head, who's getting more attention, who's making better art. I guess so. I guess it would be like competition and, um, uh, you know, you know, like the selfishness versus being unselfish, talked about in the lecture. So those are things that, I guess that I struggle with at times, and that sometimes I feel like um, that they're just that's what's going on. That's what's I acknowledge my what I'm feeling, and what really struck me about the lecture was this idea of choice, and that's the main thing that kept coming to me all the time, the whole time reading the lecture, about like, you have a choice, you have a choice, you have a choice. And that's just what I wanted to share. And also, I want to let you know I'll probably be leaving early. I don't so just I'll just slip out
Okay,
when
sure.
okay. All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
I guess I'll share.
Okay.
Yeah, so I love this lecture, and I say that every time, when I really spend the time reading the lectures, I really get so much out of them. And I really connected with everything that people have been saying up to now. So what really struck me, and what's, what I feel resonate right now, is this idea, of the being in the dualistic versus the higher self. And, up until a couple of years back, I didn't know, really couldn't tell the difference. And I can now. I know, I feel it when I'm connected with my ego self versus my higher self. And, I also follow Eckhart Tolle, and he's very helpful, with the idea of identification with form, and how the higher self really is, beyond that, in the sense that it's formless, it's the formless. And, I feel like I want to be in this place where I'm always there. And, we can't, because we are on this plane, we can't always be there, identified with the formless, as, a couple of people have said. Um, so, so one of the things that's kind of coming to me lately is this identification of being a seeker. Like, I'm identified with being a path worker and a seeker, and I'm trying to sort that out a little. Like, is that becoming a barrier to, because as a seeker, I feel like I'm always not there, and and then when I listen to her totally, as it's right, it is right here all the time, connection to the higher self or the formless, where it's always with us, whether or not we're conscious of it. So the idea of like, I'm a seeker, I'm looking for it, sort of, drives home the idea that I'm always here because I have to find it. So I kind of, I get wrapped up in little circles around that idea. So, but then if I just come back down, like when I was reading the lecture, I think about the work that I've done and the experiences I've had, and, the idea of going to the places in myself that I don't think are good, that I think are bad places that I don't want to experience. Um, you know, that helped me is like when Marion has in the past talked about, the hand holding the hand of God. Like, my intention for going there is for transformation, but I accept it. It's like that, keep the connection to the higher self while you go into the lower self. So there's a lot of different things in this lecture that I really loved. But I guess, as Barb was just saying, this idea of choice, I do feel that too. Like, we do you know, where we are, how we are, where we are. And I can't always through meditation or whatever drop into higher consciousness, but sometimes, a lot of times now I can. I'm able to, if it'll swell up, within me, and I can sort of go there, just sort of. It's not a demand. It's almost like a request or a receptivity. It's like an active receptiveness or something. So, but yeah, I think this lecture is a good way to introduce Pathwork to people too, because it's really is, like Alan was saying in the beginning, it sort of encompasses the whole thing. Like, this is what it is. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Teresa. Anyone else want to comment? Juan, Joel, Pam? Yeah.
I can jump in. Juan, you want to go ahead and I'll go after you?
Okay, yeah, let's do that. Well, I do know, honestly, there is so much to comment and about this lecture and about the entire thing. It really is. It's incredible to me that this lecture spoke to in so many ways. In so many ways, I mean, responding to the call of life. Isn't that? I mean, the topic alone is like, wow, humongous. But let me see. Well, first, I want to comment on something, and then I will read something from the first and second page and try to make a point. But first, before I do that, I'd like to comment a little bit on the the board meeting that we had earlier, and some point that we're kind of like mentioned there, perhaps superficially. Something that you mentioned. Well, first of all, I like to say, and again, I sometimes tend to go too deep. So if I do that, please feel free to stop me, because I don't want to go too deep and like lose my point or confuse people. So, but I will like to I'd like to say first and foremost that Pathwork, I mean, the way I see it, is a very, very profound path. It's not an easy path at all. I mean, it's not a path that is superficial. It's not a path for everybody, to be honest, the way I see it, because it's a very deep path, and it's for deeply thinking people. So if we don't have, or if we don't want to, and this can relate again to the call of life, but if we are not willing to really go deep into those issues that are hidden in our unconscious, and really take the courage, or gather the courage to face that inner reality, is really we are going to get lost along the way, and it's going to feel like a really, really difficult path. I feel personally that this path is first and foremost personal. You need first, that's where it all starts. We have to have that willingness to do that personal work, and that you mentioned earlier in the board meeting, that we waiting for the spirit to kind of let us know as where we move, what direction to take regarding the entire New York path, New York region, Pathwork. And it is so, really, because we have to wait for that calling, not so much at the Pathwork level, as a group, but as personally. We have to wait for the spirit to breathe in us, and like, okay, it's now time to move in this or that direction. And if we wait for that, we'll do all right. If we wait for that, that inner assurance, so to speak, and so we will move in the right direction. And really, that is that way, with us personally, and massively, massively. But the truth is, the way I see it, that it is a personal work. It is a personal work, and it is to be looked at it that way. And it also kind of referred to an email that Tracy sent her, like a week ago or something, where she seemed to somewhat concerned of, why are we not growing and expanding and developing as a group? It's like, how come more people are not coming and staying, and some come and stay for a while and go? And because it is a path it is that way. It is a path that has to be used to do that inner work at a personal level. And when that work is done, as we keep working on it and developing, expanding inwardly, individually, then the Spirit will use us to do what else He wants us to. So that's where it all starts, the way I see it, at a personal level. And once we take care of that, undoing and, getting rid of and, taming the ego and allowing it more to submit and to give into the higher self to lead it, then, things are going to happen. But we don't force that. We don't want to do that. This is something that happens kind of like as a byproduct. As you do that, then you move there. As it's like you go on and you go in third grade until you fulfill all the requirements of the third grade. You won't be passed to fourth grade. So it is that way. Okay, this is done. Okay, then you can move forward. And that's the way, the way I see it as a group. In other words, so the work that needs to be done has to start with each one of us individually at a personal level. And that's the way I see it. And so in order to, then this kind of relates to the call of life. And I'm going to read here on the fourth paragraph of the first page, where you actually read this, Alan, earlier, where the guy says, life issues a call. It makes a demand on every living individual. Most people do not sense this call. Only as you become aware of your own illusion, can you simultaneously become more aware of the truth within yourself and therefore in life. And then on the second paragraph, he goes on to say, he continues saying here, consequently, you will understand in each moment what the call of life wants to convey to you. How do you respond to it? Do you respond with your total being, or do you respond half-heartedly, or do you resist responding at all and make yourself deaf to it? That is the big questions, my friend. So again, it goes back to that personal work. Are we willing to? And this goes back again to people come and go. Whoever is not ready, it's all up to the individual. How do you want to respond to this call of life? To grow, to expand, to really know yourself, which is the key. That's what we all want, to know ourselves so that we can become those barriers that are prohibiting us from becoming that total being that we are, to impeding us from connecting with the higher self. That all these layers of the of the lower self, and and then the lower self are driving the ego, are blocking us. So we want to know those barriers, to overcome them, so we can move inner to that inner center and connect with it. So the guy goes on to say, the call of life is a dynamic movement that can be also felt as a stream. The stream of life manifests differently to each individual. It is at once universal and intensely personal. It is universal in the sense that it aims exclusively at awakening the real self, absolute reality. It goes about this in a totally unsentimental way. It disregards personal attachment, social consideration, and any other peripheral values, including personal pain or pleasure. I mean, how profound is that, right? That's the thing, this call of life resonates to all of us, but it seems, the way I understand it, that is personal for each one Yes, it is universal because it's a universal self that needs to be awakened, but it goes about differently for each individual. I mean, the things that I have to struggle with and overcome are not the same that you, Alan, or even Marianne, or, you know, Marcella, or Barbara, or Tracy, or any of us needs to overcome. It is at that personal level. Yes, it is universal because we need to connect to the universal self, but the way the things that happen in my life that I need to overcome and get rid of are the things that this higher self, that is power, that is core of life or inner movement, however it's called, needs to overcome in me, needs to really smash in me, so that, you know, so that the ego can be overcome and smashed, so that I can move forward and connect with that universal self that we all want to connect with. But the task, the goal, the mission, the whatever it is that the individual personal has to overcome and do in his or her own life is different for each one of us. So how are we going to answer to that? Are we willing to go through it and suffer whatever pain? I mean, it can happen pleasurable. If we enjoy while we doing this, then that means we are clear. We are pretty clear in most of our area, you know, within ourselves. But if it has to it has to go through pain, it has to put us through pain, to discomfort, to whatever suffering it needs to put us through, it will do that. You know, and whatever you need to disconnect with from society, from others, you know, all the people that are not really aligned with this mission or with this work, is going to do whatever it is to do, whatever it has to do. Either it hurts that or not, or it's pleasurable or not, or whatever it needs to do to make that happen for each one of us individually, is what it has to do, and it will disregard everything else, you know, as long as that goal needs to be accomplished, because it knows for a fact that once that goal is accomplished, beauty, life, abundance, universality, and, you know, you're going to become that sharp instrument to help the others and to help the world. I mean, you want to become the thing that you not even dream of being. So, you know, this is the way I see it, and I think it's beautiful when we each one of us, as we progress, as you said earlier, Alan, every step we take in this direction, we got to start to feel that relief. We are going to start to feel better, because it is clear, and it's like now all the layers, like you're peeling all the layers of an onion. Once you remove one, okay, then it's less. Then you know the higher self can kind of like pierce a little bit to the inner core, and we become to feel a little bit more relief, and, you know, you can swim a little bit freer. But, you know, it's a work in progress, and it's beautiful though, because every time you progress, every time you move forward, we know we are not going to accomplish all these in one incarnations. You know, I think most of us would not. But it's a work of beauty, because every step we take forward in that direction is a relief, is joy. It brings fulfillment to some degree. It brings power. It brings freedom. It brings that joy that we all, that we all inwardly desire, even if we are not conscious of it. I'm sorry, I kind of went long, but
No,
I wanted to share that.
I wanted to just say something, Juan, about what you just said. I know Joel's going to speak. I'm going to be quick. A friend of mine once said to me, the universe doesn't care about your comfort, only that you learn the lessons you need to learn. This is a friend who actually had the experience of going to prison as part of his spiritual path.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it can be painful. I mean, we just have to pray and, you know, kind of like try to connect as much as we can. So even have to be hit with the, you know, with a ball of iron, maybe at least we are hit with one of a robber or something, you know. In other words, so that you know, the strike is not as harsh, but it will do whatever it needs to do, really, to clear whatever it needs to clear. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, John, sorry, I probably used some more of your space.
No need to apologize, Juan.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's
very
a
went too deep
blessing
there,
to share this time to see your passion and excitement about the Pathwork.
Yeah.
And so that's
it's my life.
A blessing for all of us. So there's just so much here, right? And it's just fascinating listening to Alan. He gave such a thorough and extensive review of what's here. And it's always interesting to me because I'm spending time trying to Tracy, can you just turn that down up there, honey, a little bit so I don't have such an echo, or close your door, please? Tracy and I are both on, and since it's like I'm hearing myself as I'm speaking, it comes all coming back to me because she's in the other room. It's rather distracting. Forgive me. So in any event, what I really focused on for myself, and it's interesting, right, how that each lecture, there's so many different aspects, and there's a major theme, and then there's sub themes, and so it speaks to each of us in different ways, as you say, Juan, that it's very individual, our journeys, and so the Pathwork, each lecture there are different parts that are resonating with us, and it may be very different. So that's a long-winded introduction to just say that I'm just going back here. Okay, so to my page. So although you really want to claim your goal, you still feel it's impossible. There's some wall that does not let you get through. The wall must never, under any circumstances, be disregarded or glossed over. So this idea that we have these negative aspects that are preventing us from the unified state, or experiencing our oneness, our God self, and then it says, further, the reservation within yourself must be linked with a character defect that you've not really faced, nor do you wish to, because you do not want to abandon it, right? So in other words, so there's this wall that's preventing me from moving forward, and yet I don't want to remove the wall, maybe not even acknowledge the wall, because there are aspects of myself that are being fed by, or that needs are being met by this wall, right?
Right.
So, I think we've worked with this before, but I think for me in this lecture really pushed this particular point. So now Tracy and I were down in Turks, and my friends play golf, and I play golf with them, and I see this manifesting in my golf, right? That there are times when I play very well, and times when it's really rather discouraging. And so it was symbolic, I think, of my relationship to success and to making extensive effort in regard to something. For me, I have great difficulty responding to external demands, schedules. Now I am a very responsible person, self-motivated, but even if just even asking me something to do, my initial reaction is no. And I might think about it. I'll think about it, and then quickly I'll say yes. But my initial response is no. So there's a lot going on here that I'm trying to pull apart. My father was very explosive, and so at any time he could just go off the handle. Now, fortunately, never hit us, but it was very unpleasant. Just being around this, it was like Tracy and I would say, it was like a little teapot ready to explode. And so I think part of it goes back to that, but then I take it a step further and I say, hey, look, let's forgive him. He's passed. This is what I chose, right? That I chose to be in this family. I chose him for my highest good. And he certainly was, he was a very loving, generous person, a good father, despite this tendency that he had. So I'm really trying to see all these different aspects of, where is this coming from? I started doing a past life regression to see where is this reluctance to really give my all to to my golf, or to give more. So I mean, I'll even be on the course and I can see a consistent pattern where where I screw up, right? Consistently screw up in certain situations. And so anyway, I'm just working and trying to uncover as much as I can about this. And one thing that I came to was, I don't know if some of you, I'm sure, have done past life regression, and so typically your first experience in going into the past is the death, how you died, right? And so it came to me that there must have been something about having a lot of responsibility that caused me to die. And so, I mean, there's all kinds of things that we died from, right? Died in order to open ourselves to a deeper level of living. So anyway, the lecture has been, very challenging in that regard. But I feel like I'm getting closer, that I'm untangling this. And part of it also is just acceptance of just saying, okay, that's how I am, and it's okay. Maybe I had so much responsibility in other lives that I needed to have a little break this time, right? That we don't always carrying 110% of what we're really comfortable carrying. So anyway, that's about all I have to say. And it just really is, the challenge, as Swan is saying, it is in facing our limitations, trying to uncover what it is that's keeping us from moving forward, seeing the parts that are being fed by not moving forward, being accepting responsibility for that. And then just being kind and accepting and loving to myself, and to each other, to that. Maybe we're not going to uncover everyone. We're not going to untie every knot. That we do have limitations, and maybe the part of the answer is just accepting that. And then of course we know that when we accept our own limitations, we have more understanding and forgiveness for each other. But in believing that we keep at it, that there will be greater light that comes in and upholds us. So that's it. And thank you, Alan, again for such a thorough and extensive review. There's just so much in this.
Well, it's hard to touch on, every time I read these lectures, I feel like I'm in a enchanted forest where I have to go down one path, but I didn't go down another one. There's so much going on. The lectures are holographic, every part kind of like mirrors every other part. It's also kind of mysterious because sometimes you read a lecture and you say, I swear I didn't read this. I didn't read this.
Yeah, Tracy says that all the time. Even though she maybe read the lecture 5 times or 10 times, she always says, I can't believe I read this before, but it's like it's a brand new lecture for me.
Yeah. I remember when I was a kid, some rock and roll guy, he had a record that you could put the needle down, and depending on how you put it down, it played 2 different records on one side because the grooves were interlaced. So kind of like that. the lecture is sort of like, wait a second, I didn't think I saw that before. I wasn't there. Um, so anyway, Jordan, Beverly, thoughts about this lecture? Pam, I don't mean to forget you either. It does sort of encapsulate the pathwork process in a nutshell, really, doesn't it? And I also think it's kind of, there's something kind and nice. This lecture is basically not beating us up the guy really never beats us up, but sometimes I think we interpret it like that. You have to focus on the negativity, but I really love the part about expanding into the universe. That is wonderful. It's like a plant, the more you expand, the more you get, the more you trust, the more you put out, the more you're willing to explore without the ego, without the need for recompense, without the need for return, the more you find that you've received. All right. Well, we don't have to comment. Nobody has to comment. Only if something particularly moves you. You want to share?
Actually, Joel, I have a question for you. Are you talking, Joel, were you talking about doing past life regression on your own, or do you have somebody that you work with that you could recommend, actually?
I have Tracy.
Oh, it's Tracy.
So
Is Tracy
yes,
do
so
it with other
Tracy,
people?
I don't know. You have to ask Tracy.
Tracy,
Um,
would you do past life regression with another person? Actually, I have a friend who's, I'm interested, but I have another friend who's
you're talking about past life regression. So I
past life
haven't.
regression.
Oh, okay. I have done that with some people. I mean, we can try sometime if you want. Send me an email with your phone number. There, Brian Weiss, Dr. Brian Weiss.
Yeah, I know.
You know him. So he has a couple of videos on YouTube. I saw one
Yeah, I've
recently.
seen it.
You've seen those?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll contact you. I'll send you an email
All
with
right,
so we
fine.
can maybe talk.
Sure.
I don't take the time here. Thanks.
Marion, Marion, did you want to say something?
Yes, just kind of a wind-up question, because I too want to express so much appreciation. I dug this lecture out. It's got nine little post-its on the side of it with arrows pointing and everything's underscored. I did that decades ago, probably, so I didn't even remember it. So getting this out was like it just spoke to me so. I knew I'm getting so much confirmation that I am loved, protected, guided when I feel identified with just little Marion and having these wonderful, wonderful ahas. And so I just wanted to express my gratitude for all of the structure in the pathwork that we're given a map and a map of the territory. And the guide says this is conceptual, it's not intellectual, it's a concept. Where you are is so important for staying steady on the path. Like when we left the oneness, the golden drops, and our journey, and then our return. And it's important to have that map. And I thought, and the three spheres, because I just want to say, as my last joyful expression, that because the individualized self one is the psychological. I had these parents, I got traumas, I had developed my images, all that stuff, and that individualized self one, and the universal self is the higher self, lower self mask. Then the universal spirit is 100%, and there is no, when you're in that, there's no duality. So I want to stress that this whole thing called creation is an illusion. So there you go. And I'm here to play the game of being Marion in this life with a lot of past lives and all that stuff. And it is. And I'm so relieved when I know I'm playing the game and not getting lost in it. Yeah. Because it is an illusion. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
Actually, I realize if we have a little more time, I would like to it's kind of a little bit of a question comment. because this is one of these lectures. I didn't get to read it really carefully, but I read read some of it, and based off of conversation, I'm reflecting on the idea that some of the experiences in life. So I know that it talks about the wall and about the self, looking for character defects, but I'm wondering about the experience of having experiences that are for the purpose of experience universal more. So like I feel like through the pain that I've been through, the physical illness and various other traumas, that what's happening to me is I feel that I'm having more of an experience of more of the suffering of the world. It's like I came in a very sheltered environment, and of course, I'm still pretty sheltered. And I think the path probably will be to be mostly sheltered, although one wonders. But definitely, I feel like so much of what I'm experiencing is so that I will understand more of the universal suffering, so that I can be more of hopefully when I become, as I feel like I'm moving towards healing. I've definitely had a lot of improvement. But I feel like this passion is here, like nothing's dampened in me. I think that when I get to a certain point, I will be more able to bring my gifts into the world, more informed by that experience. So, but I also and that the meeting the quote unquote character defects. I don't like that term. Like I've never liked it in 12-step programs, but it's a semantic issue. I definitely, the idea of inventory or meeting the parts of ourselves or the ego aspects that are challenging. It's weird. I'm having trouble, finding the words. It's just because I do feel like sometimes I have trouble with labeling. What's the character defect, or what is the thing that I really need to meet. I don't know. I know it wasn't all that coherent.
That just has to do with the recognition of the images, the repeating patterns, and the reason why something magnetizes you and doesn't magnetize somebody else. I think that's what he means by character defect. It's just whatever the bumps in the road are.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah.
It's also helpful to look at this from a life perspective of many lifetimes, I think. Because isn't that the big thing that you think, oh Christ, I've learned so much and now I'm going to die. But that, it's all, everything we learn continues through our souls and transforms and creates about the basis for learning more and growing more in another life. Yeah. So, we want to put out the utmost effort that we can right here and now. That's our job. So we're not trying to defer stuff, but sometimes we can't do everything. And we learn lessons like what you said, Juan, about that, we are led into experiences that may be very painful, but the higher self, the real self, brings us to what we have to experience. And then we have to learn from those experiences. Those experiences transform us, but maybe not for this life, maybe for the next or subsequent life.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the higher self uses the lower self to bring about those
absolutely
experiences, right, into our lives that we need to go through, that we need to overcome. And yes, they're painful, they are uncomfortable, they are, they cause us suffering and and struggles and you name it. But it is brought into our lives only so that we can overcome them and transcend them. It's by going through it By facing it, they're not escaping, not resisting, not masking it, not shirking away, not making believe that it's not there. That we overcome, just by going through it. Like the guy said, the only way out of it is in and out of it, is in and through it, So yeah.
I just keep thinking of the word alchemy. It's like alchemy, and I don't know if it's the fires. And then I was also thinking about pleasure. You have a different orientation towards pleasure and pain. Like I had this moment where I was reflecting on certain type of pain, and I had this moment where it was like pleasure and pain. I know in Buddhist thought, I know that it's like that's a certain point they become. I think Juan, you talked about. Didn't you talk about a thing with torture, where the torture becomes you? That was
Yeah, it's very profound, actually. Yeah, I think it's on lecture 91. I think that the guy talks about this, that there is that state when you the torture, actually they use that in that, those cruel people that torture other people, for political reasons or whatever. There is a state when the torturer actually knows, and they know this, it's a fact, they know this, that when the prisoner or somebody is tortured too much to the point that the person being tortured really actually confronts that pain to the point that it turns into ecstasy. So it no longer feels painful. And so the torturer know this state, and in the tortured person, and so they stop and give it some time so they can again go back to defend and to resist that pain, because then the torture is going to have its effect, but not when you transcend that pain, so that it becomes into ecstasy. It's kind of crazy, but the guy really actually explains that nicely in that lecture. Yeah.
And I want to just, because this also brings, because what Marion just said about duality and non-duality. So if everything is a spectrum, it's another way to think about the illusion of physical life. So if you think of it, pain and pleasure is a spectrum, it is then a perfect thing of how there is no duality, because there's no black and white. It's a spectrum of one thing. So I don't know that.
Yeah. Well, the duality exists as as Tracy was pointing at the form level, and on this level of where the level we are at, on this plane of existence. But when you transcend that duality, you reach the unity state, and then everything is just one. You know what I mean? So the reason we are incarnated here is because all souls, all of us that you see around walking around here, is because we are at that level that we need to transcend that duality, and that's why we ended up here. So as we progress, more and more moving in that direction of transcending that duality, that either or, that we believe it or not. I mean, I keep observing myself on this, and almost everything I do and think, I seem to think is it either or, either this or that, or either is or it is not. And I observe myself, and I touch myself very often, feeling and believing like this, So it's a work in progress, really.
But it is an illusion. It's real. I mean, it's very real, but it's also a very real illusion, right?
The more you keep on transforming, the more those things coexist, and then one thing becomes the other. I think.
Yeah.
We in the TP program, we used to call it real but not true. It's real, but it's not. Yeah.
Real but not true. It was hard to hear you.
Yeah, real but not true. So it's real because it's what we perceive.
Yeah,
our senses or whatever, but it's not in line with truth. Like when you're in the dualistic.
Yeah.
Well,
it's not aligned with the absolute truth. Like I think the guy said in one of the lectures that there's actually three truths. There's a truth there is a truth that we believe, and there is the absolute truth. So I think those first two we need to transcend, the truth that we believe, because it feels real to us, even though it's not real, as you're saying. It feels real to us because we too are trapped in this, unreality. So we feel it real. It seems like, yeah, this is it, because we are so much living still on the plane of the ego. But as we move forward and we transcend the truth that we believe, the truth that is, and the truth, so we'll be able to connect with that absolute truth, and so that's the work, the way I see it. Mhm.
Thank you. Jordan, Beverly, last chance.
Well, I have a question. I was kind of intrigued by Marion saying that there's a map. So I was wondering if you could tell me what lectures one can start to walk on the map.
Um, I don't know. I have it as a illustration in my notebook, written out like a ladder. So it had to be taken, from classes or something, leaving the Godhead and going through all these stages of transformation back to the Godhead. So I, that's all that's the map that I have.
Maybe you can
Okay.
scan it for us.
How would I do that? Yeah.
You don't have a scanner?
Oh, I've
know,
never scanned anything from my,
Or take
I
a
don't
photo
know.
with your phone, maybe. That might
I
work.
could, maybe I could talk with you about that, Alan.
Sure, of course. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and I have to find it in my notebook first, in my file.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would do that. Okay.
Yeah, Jordan.
I
How's
was
it going down there?
relating. I was relating to the wall as demands, and how when am I demanding that reality match something that my ego wants?
A forcing current. You mean having to have something. You're breaking up a little. Maybe you should turn off your video because I think you don't have enough bandwidth. Try that. Okay. Jordan? Can't hear you.
Oh, we're not hearing you, Jordan.
Yeah, not hearing you, Jordan. Maybe you turned off both. Because sometimes when you don't have enough bandwidth, then you can cut the video.
Oh, okay. Is it okay now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I was thinking about the wall as being that forcing current, that demand, and relating, even though I've done a lot of work on it, what parts of it still exist in my life, and how I shy away from my awareness of it. So it was a good sort of thing to consider and feel into for myself. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
Tracy.
Thank you. All right, does anyone have a candle? Tracy, do you have a candle? Marion?
I might have one.
Oh, good. Would you great for you?
Yeah, Alan, I don't have a candle, sorry.
All right, well, I think Teresa might have one. And we do our meditation.
Voila. Would that work if I light it?
Yeah, you light it and just,
Ellen, may I ask you a quick question?
of course,
This is
Pam.
about the Pathwork lectures. I
Yes.
put all of them into one Microsoft, not all of them, I put the 1996, the unedited, and the Q&A into three separate Microsoft documents. And I numbered the paragraphs and I added questions to the ones that didn't have question titles. And my question is, when I have these groups that I want to start with people to introduce them to Pathwork, especially this lecture has 2 paragraphs in it that are amazing, as well as a lot of other things. But my question is, I like to work with the 19 or the unedited. And my question is, people who haven't bought the CD, which they can't buy now, I understand, you have to become a member to get access to the unedited lectures. Is that correct?
No, you can still buy the CD, but we haven't pressed any more copies, so they may be in short supply. I mean, I think on eBay you might be able to find, or on Amazon, because that was a limited run that we pressed of that CD. So, I mean, it's not easy to find. We don't have more available at the,
Okay, so would I be allowed to show, to let them use a copy of the document? I mean, I haven't changed any of the words. You know what I mean, as far as that goes, as far as copyright, that's what I was concerned about, copyright. If people
yeah,
weren't
no,
members or didn't,
if you're not charging, and if you say
No.
used by permission and copyright by the International Pathwork Foundation, then I think you're on solid ground. You can certainly share them.
okay, so they could actually purchase one like on Amazon or something and not be a member and not buy it or get it from some other person. I wouldn't be, by giving them the unedited, I wouldn't be in violation of the copyright. That's what you're saying, right?
Well, what we're saying is that we're trying to, matter of fact, interestingly enough, we just had this discussion today at the Pathwork Foundation, and a lady named Jill Laurie has created an index of the unedited lectures, and by topic, by subject, and we're going to make those available on our website very soon. And that's very interesting. So you can look at any different subject topic, and then you can see what the guide said about these subjects and topics. Because, the Q&As, of course, they're not indexed by subject. So it's kind of like a grab bag. If you know a particular question answer you like, you can share it. But there's no way if you don't have any kind of a compendium or an index.
That's something else I did. I put categories beside the questions.
Okay, well, she did
And-
that too. So we are going to roll that out. My bias, my bias is always to share these materials for free,
Okay.
because we want them to get out there to the people that are meant to read them.
Well, having them all in one doc makes searches much easier. You know what I mean?
If they're in an
To
MS
search for things.
file.
So, and the navigation pane, for looking up the things. So,
Sure. Well,
okay.
that's
Well,
a
thank
lot
you very
of-
much. I feel better now.
You're welcome, Pam. Okay. All right, so I see we have Teresa has a candle. So let's have our 10-minute meditation. Let's see. All right, I'm going to read a brief paragraph. Here goes. Wherever you succeed because you are inwardly free, you will see new manifestations in your life as never before. Where you still feel yourself blocked, unable to believe, unable to follow through, you will find deeper aspects of yourself that you could not bring out before, and which you will now recognize as deformations of your character structure, without incurring the past danger of closing the door through your damaging moralizing. Your freedom in this respect will set the stage for the decision for transformation, which can again be tested for its inner sincerity by your meditation. All right, 10 minutes.